The ballroom shimmered under golden lights, crystal chandeliers glowing like small suns above the crowd. Soft music floated through the air, mixing with laughter and the gentle clink of glasses. Waiters moved smoothly between guests, carrying silver trays filled with sparkling drinks. The entire place looked like a scene from a dream, elegant, powerful, and carefully planned. It was his night. He stood near the center of the room, surrounded by business partners and investors. His suit was perfectly fitted, his smile wide and confident. People shook his hand, congratulated him, praised his success. Only a few years ago, he had been struggling to keep his small startup alive. Now, he was celebrating a major deal that would push his company to a new level. Cameras flashed. Someone from a business magazine asked for a quick photo. He adjusted his tie and gave his best confident look. Across the room, his wife stood quietly near a tall table decorated with white roses. One hand rested gently on her growing belly. She was 7 months pregnant, and although she tried not to show it, her feet were already aching from standing too long. The baby inside her had been active all evening, as if reacting to the loud music and noise. She wore a soft blue dress that flowed comfortably around her. It wasn't flashy or bold like the gowns many other women wore. She had never cared much for showing off. A simple pair of earrings and light makeup were enough for her. She preferred comfort, especially now. A few guests greeted her politely, but most of the attention stayed on her husband. That was normal. She had always stayed in the background while he stood in the spotlight. It had been that way since the early days when they worked from a tiny apartment, sharing one old desk and a second-hand laptop. She remembered those nights clearly. The long hours, the stress, the fear of failure. She had believed in him even when others didn't. When bills piled up and doubt filled the room, she was the one who reminded him not to quit. Tonight was supposed to feel like a reward for all those years. He finally walked toward her, drink in hand. His face was slightly flushed, but his energy was high. He placed an arm around her shoulders. "There you are," he said loudly, almost as if announcing her presence. "Everyone keeps asking where my beautiful wife is." She smiled gently. "I've been right here." He laughed, taking another sip. "She doesn't like the spotlight," he told the nearby guests. "She prefers staying quiet. Very traditional." The guests smiled politely. She felt something small and uncomfortable in his tone, but she ignored it. Maybe he was just excited. More people gathered around them. Someone mentioned how difficult it must be to run a growing company while preparing to become a father. He shook his head dramatically. "You have no idea," he said. "Running a company is easier than surviving pregnancy mood swings." A few people chuckled. She forced a small laugh, though her cheeks felt warm. He had made small jokes before, but usually in private. This felt different. Louder, he continued, enjoying the attention. I come home after a long day, and suddenly I'm an expert in cravings, nursery colors, and baby names. More laughter followed. She shifted her weight slightly, feeling the baby move again. She told herself not to be sensitive. It was just humor. Everyone joked about pregnancy. But then he added, "And don't even get me started on the food bills. I might need another investment round just to cover snack expenses." This time the laughter was louder. She lowered her eyes, staring at the white roses on the table. Her hand tightened around her glass of water. She could feel people glancing at her, waiting to see her reaction. One woman gave her a sympathetic smile. He seemed encouraged by the crowd's response. The more they laughed, the more confident he became. Soon it was time for his official speech. A small stage had been set up at one end of the ballroom. A large screen behind it displayed the company's logo in shining gold letters. The music faded, and guests moved closer to the stage. He walked up confidently, microphone in hand. Applause filled the room. She stood near the front now, wanted to show her support. Despite everything, she was proud of how far he had come. She remembered when he practiced speeches in their living room, nervous and unsure. Tonight, he looked strong. He began by thanking his team, his investors, his mentors. His voice was steady and clear. He spoke about growth, vision, and future plans. The crowd listened carefully. Then, halfway through, his tone shifted. "Of course, he said with a grin. None of this would be possible without my biggest supporter. He extended a hand toward her. A spotlight suddenly turned in her direction. The bright light made her blink. My wife, he announced. The bravest woman I know. Brave enough to marry an ambitious man with crazy dreams. Applause rose again. She smiled, relieved. This felt better. But he continued. She stood by me when I had nothing, he said. Back when my office was basically our kitchen table and our biggest asset was hope. The crowd laughed lightly. And now, he added, she's about to give me my biggest project yet. A baby. More applause. He paused dramatically, taking a sip from his glass. But I have to admit, he said, lowering his voice playfully, pregnancy has changed things. A few people leaned forward. She used to help me review contracts, he said. Now she reviews baby stroller designs with the same seriousness. Some laughter again. She used to talk about investments, he continued. Now she talks about diaper brands like it's a business strategy. The crowd laughed louder. Her smile began to fade slightly. Each joke felt like a small push. He wasn't finished. I guess that's what happens, he said. You trade business meetings for doctor appointments. You trade profit charts for ultrasound pictures. He shook his head as if amused. Honestly, he added, sometimes I feel like I'm running two companies, this one and the one at home. The room filled with laughter again. She felt her chest tighten. Something inside her felt exposed, like private moments were being displayed for entertainment. She had never complained about attending doctor visits alone when he was busy. She had never reminded him how many nights she stayed awake researching things to ease her pregnancy discomfort without disturbing him. She had handled everything quietly. Now those sacrifices were being turned into jokes. He looked at her directly from the stage. But don't worry, he said. I'm sure she'll get back to normal after the baby arrives. Right? A few guests laughed nervously. The spotlight remained on her. She could feel every eye in the room. She placed a hand gently on her belly, trying to steady herself. The baby kicked again, stronger this time. For a brief moment, she saw something in his expression. Pride mixed with something else. Maybe insecurity. Maybe the need to look powerful in front of his investors. He had worked so hard to build his image as a strong, self-made leader. Perhaps he believed that making light of his home life made him look more in control. But what he didn't see was the hurt growing quietly in her eyes. She had never asked him to mention her. She had never wanted attention. All she wanted was respect. He turned back to the crowd. Marriage is all about balance, he said with a grin. And sometimes that means surviving emotional storms. A few more laughs. Her heart dropped. Emotional storms. Was that how he saw her? The music began to rise softly again, signaling the end of the speech. He raised his glass high. To growth, he said proudly. In business and in life. Glasses lifted around the room. She clapped along with everyone else, though her hands felt heavy. As he stepped down from the stage, several guests rushed to congratulate him again. They praised his humor, his confidence, his charisma. She stayed where she was for a moment, breathing slowly. A close friend approached her quietly. Are you okay? The friend asked softly. She nodded. I'm fine. But her voice sounded distant, even to herself. Across the room, he was laughing again, retelling one of his jokes to a small group who had missed the speech. She watched him from afar. This was the man she had believed in. The man she defended when others doubted him. The man she supported without ever asking for credit. Tonight, she didn't feel like a partner. She felt like part of the performance. And she didn't know yet that the night was far from over. Because while he was enjoying the applause and the attention, something unexpected was about to shift the energy of the entire room. The grand doors at the back of the ballroom, tall and polished, began to open slowly. At first, no one noticed. But in just a few seconds, everything would change. The doors at the back of the ballroom opened slowly, but most people were still focused on the stage. Music had started playing again, soft and elegant, and waiters moved quickly to refill empty glasses. The party seemed to return to normal, at least on the surface. She was still standing near the front, trying to gather herself. Her chest felt tight and her eyes burned, but she refused to let tears fall in front of everyone. She kept reminding herself that this was not the place to break down. Not tonight. Not in front of cameras and strangers. Her husband was across the room again, laughing loudly with a group of investors. He seemed lighter, almost proud of how his speech had entertained everyone. One of the men patted him on the back and said something that made him laugh even harder. She slowly walked toward a quieter corner near the tall windows. The city lights outside sparkled against the dark sky. For a moment, she wished she were home, sitting on the couch with her feet up, feeling the baby move in peace. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, as if reacting to her emotions. She placed both hands on her belly and whispered softly, "It's okay." Behind her, she heard footsteps. "I was just joking, you know," her husband's voice said casually. She turned around. He stood there with another drink in his hand, his expression relaxed. "I know you were joking," she replied gently. "Everyone loved it," he added, smiling. The room was alive. That's how you connect with people. She nodded slowly but didn't say anything. He noticed her silence and sighed. "You're not upset, are you?" She hesitated. She didn't want another public scene. "I just felt a little exposed," she said carefully. "Some things are private." He shook his head lightly. "You're overthinking. It was harmless fun. People expect personality, not boring speeches." She looked at him, searching his face for understanding. There's a difference between personality and embarrassment. His smile faded slightly. "Embarrassment? Come on. I praise you." She swallowed. It didn't feel like praise. For a second, something defensive flashed in his eyes. "You know how much pressure I'm under," he said. "These deals don't close themselves. I need investors confident in me, confident that I'm strong." "And making me look emotional makes you look strong," she asked quietly. He let out a short laugh. "That's not what I meant." But before he could explain further, someone from across the room called his name loudly. Another investor wanted his attention. He glanced back at her. "We'll talk later, okay? Don't make that face. Tonight is important." He walked away without waiting for her response. She stood there, feeling more alone than she had in years. Near the entrance, the three men who had just arrived paused for a moment. They took in a room calmly. They were dressed in dark suits, sharp and simple. They carried themselves with quiet confidence, not needing attention to prove anything. One of them scanned the room until his eyes landed on her. His expression changed immediately. He leaned slightly toward the others and said something low. The second man followed his gaze. The third's jaw tightened almost instantly. They had arrived planning to surprise her, to celebrate quietly in the back, and maybe congratulate her husband later. They had not expected to see her standing alone with red eyes and a forced smile. Across the ballroom, her husband had returned to the stage area for another short toast requested by a partner. The microphone was handed back to him, and the music faded once more. "Just one more quick thank you," he said, grinning. "I promise this is the last one." The crowd chuckled. She felt tired. All she wanted was for the night to end peacefully. But he continued. "You know," he said, "building a company is like building a family. Takes patience, takes discipline, and sometimes you have to deal with unexpected mood swings." More laughter. She closed her eyes briefly. He gestured playfully toward her again. "Pregnancy is a full-time job, and apparently I'm the assistant now." The laughter was louder this time, more comfortable. The crowd had fully accepted this as entertainment. One guest shouted jokingly, "Better get used to it." Her husband laughed along. "Trust me, I'm trying. But I miss my calm, logical partner. Right now, I have a hormone-driven supervisor at home." A few people gasped softly, but others still laughed. She felt the words land heavily. Hormone-driven. The spotlight found her again. She didn't smile this time. Her eyes met his from across the room. There was no anger in them, only hurt. That was the moment the three men near the entrance started walking forward. They didn't rush. They didn't look angry. Their steps were steady and controlled. But something about their presence shifted the air around them. A few guests near the back recognized them first. Whispers began quietly. "Is that? It can't be. They're here." The murmurs spread slowly toward the center of the room, like a wave. On stage, Her husband didn't notice at first. He was still speaking. "Marriage teaches you sacrifice," he said. "For example, I sacrifice quiet evenings for baby shopping discussions." Some forced laughter followed, but it was weaker now. People were distracted. He noticed a change in energy. "What's wrong?" he asked lightly. "Did I finally run out of good jokes?" He laughed at his own comment. But then he saw it. The crowd was no longer looking at him. They were looking past him, toward the back of the room. He turned slightly and froze. The three men had reached the middle of the ballroom. Their presence was calm but powerful. Staff members stepped aside automatically. Conversation stopped completely now. She saw them clearly for the first time. Her breath caught in her throat. They hadn't told her they were coming. The oldest one's eyes softened the moment they met hers. Without hesitation, he removed his jacket as he approached and gently placed it around her shoulders. It wasn't cold in the ballroom, but the gesture was protective. The second one handed her a fresh glass of water from a passing tray, his movements quiet but caring. The third stood slightly in front of her, facing the stage. Her husband's grip tightened around the microphone. For the first time that night, he looked uncertain. The guests began whispering more openly now. Everyone in the business world knew who these men were. They were respected, influential, and powerful investors across multiple industries. They rarely attended public social events unless there was serious business involved. And now they were here, at his party. He forced a smile. "Well," he said awkwardly into microphone, "looks like we have some important guests joining us." His voice sounded thinner than before. The eldest brother looked up at him calmly. "Please," he said in a steady voice that carried across the silent room, "continue your speech." The tone wasn't aggressive. It was controlled, but it carried weight. Her husband swallowed. "I was just wrapping up." The third brother tilted his head slightly. "We heard part of it." The silence that followed felt heavier than any noise earlier that evening. She stood between them, overwhelmed. Part of her felt relief. Part of her felt embarrassed that they had witnessed this. The baby moved again, and she placed her hand over her belly. Her husband tried to regain his confidence. "It was just light humor," he said quickly. "Family jokes. Nothing serious." The second brother finally spoke, his voice even. "Humor is only funny when both people are laughing." A few guests lowered their eyes. Her husband stepped down from the stage slowly, handing the microphone back without another word. The room felt different now. The laughter from earlier seemed distant and inappropriate. The eldest brother looked at his sister gently. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. She nodded, though her eyes shimmered. "I'm fine." He studied her face carefully, as if reading what she wasn't saying. Her husband approached cautiously, trying to smile. "I didn't know you were coming," he said, extending a hand for a handshake. The brothers didn't ignore him, but they didn't smile either. The third one shook his hand briefly. "We didn't want to miss an important night," he said. His words were polite, but his eyes were not. The balance of the room had shifted completely, and everyone could feel it. What had started as harmless jokes had turned into something far more serious. And this was only the beginning. The room stayed silent for several long seconds. It was the kind of silence that made people uncomfortable, the kind that forced everyone to suddenly become aware of where they were standing and who they were standing near. Even the soft background music had stopped. Her husband stood a few steps away from her, unsure of what to do with his hands. The confidence he had carried all evening was gone. His shoulders were stiff, and his eyes kept moving from her face to the three men beside her, then to the guests watching closely. The eldest brother gently adjusted the jacket around her shoulders. "You don't have to stay here if you don't want to," he said quietly, only loud enough for her to hear. She shook her head slowly. "I'm okay," she replied. Her voice was calm, but inside, her emotions were tangled. She felt supported, but also exposed. This was never how she wanted things to come out. The middle brother looked around the room, taking in the faces of the guests. Many of them had stopped pretending to sip drinks or check phones. Everyone knew something important was happening. He cleared his throat gently. "We don't want to interrupt the celebration," he said in a calm, respectful tone. "But we do want to make sure our sister is treated with the respect she deserves." No one spoke. Her husband forced a small laugh. Of course, he said quickly. She's my wife. I respect her. The youngest brother finally turned to look at him fully. His voice was steady, not raised, but it carried clearly. Respect is not something you say. It's something you show. That sentence landed hard. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone near the bar quietly set a glass down. Her husband tried to recover. I think this is being misunderstood, he said. It was a joke. People joke about these things all the time. The eldest brother nodded slowly. They do, but jokes stop being jokes when they cause pain. Her husband opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. For the first time that night, he looked unsure what to say next. The wife took a small step forward. I didn't want this, she said softly. Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired. I didn't ask him to come in like this. The eldest brother looked at her. We know, he said, but we heard what was said. She lowered her eyes. I just want to support him. That's all. Her husband looked at her, surprised. He hadn't expected her to speak now. You always do, she continued, even when it costs you. The words hung in the air. One of the guests, a senior investor, cleared his throat. Perhaps we should all take a breath, he suggested gently. This is a private family matter. The eldest brother turned to him politely. Normally we would agree, he said, but it became public the moment it was put on a microphone. No one argued with that. Her husband rubbed his forehead. Look, he said, lowering his voice, I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I've been under a lot of stress. I thought keeping things light would help. The youngest brother nodded once. Stress explains behavior, he said. It doesn't excuse it. That was when murmurs started again, softer this time. People whispered to one another, connecting dots they hadn't seen before. Some remembered hearing rumors years ago about early funding, quiet support, unexpected opportunities. The middle brother spoke again, still calm. Many people here admire you, he said to the husband. They believe in your story. The idea that you built everything from nothing. Her husband straightened slightly, grateful for the opening. I did work hard, he said. No one can deny that. No one is denying your effort, the brother replied. But effort is not the same as doing alone. The room went quiet again. He continued, Our sister never wanted attention. She never wanted credit. She asked us to stay out of her marriage and her home. We respected that. Her husband's eyes widened slightly. But silence, the brother added, should never be mistaken for weakness. The eldest brother placed a gentle hand on her back. When she believed in you, he said to the husband, she believed fully. She gave trust freely. That trust deserved protection. Her husband swallowed hard. I didn't realize it came across that way, he said. She looked at him then, really looked at him. Not the confident businessman on stage, not the charming speaker everyone admired, just the man she married. I tried to tell you, she said quietly, right after the first speech. He looked down. I know. You walked away, she said. He had no answer for that. The guests stood frozen, unsure whether they were supposed to stay or leave. No one wanted to miss what happened next, but no one wanted to be seen watching either. The eldest brother finally turned to the crowd. We're not here to create a scene, he said. This evening was meant to celebrate success. We respect that. Some people nodded. But success, he continued, means very little if it costs you your character. Those words seemed to hit her husband harder than anything else. The middle brother added, We won't speak about finances or business tonight. That's not necessary. That caught her husband off guard. He had been bracing for exposure, for numbers and facts. Instead, the focus stayed exactly where it belonged, on respect. The youngest brother turned to his sister again. Do you want to leave? He asked gently. We can go somewhere quieter. She hesitated. Part of her wanted to disappear, to escape the weight of so many eyes. But another part of her felt something she hadn't felt all night. Strength. She shook her head slowly. Not yet. Her husband looked at her, surprised again. She took a breath. I just want one thing, she said, turning to him. Honesty. He nodded quickly. You have it. Then be honest, she said. Were those jokes about me or about you? He opened his mouth, then stopped. His face softened as the truth reached him. They were about me, he admitted quietly. I wanted to look confident, in control. I didn't want anyone thinking I was distracted or weak because of family. She nodded slowly. So you made me look small instead. His eyes filled slightly. I didn't realize that's what I was doing. But that's what happened, she said. The eldest brother stepped in gently. Real strength, he said, is standing beside your family, not standing above them. Her husband took a shaky breath. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I truly am. The apology wasn't loud. It wasn't polished. It didn't sound like something practiced for an audience. For the first time that night, it sounded real. The room seemed to breathe again. No one clapped. No one spoke. Her brothers waited, watching her face, letting her decide what came next. She placed both hands on her belly, feeling the slow, steady movement of the baby. She thought about the future, about what kind of example she wanted her child to see. I don't need a public apology, she said softly. I need change. He nodded immediately. I understand. The youngest brother looked at him closely. Understanding is the first step, he said. Action is the rest. Her husband met his gaze. I know. The eldest brother finally smiled faintly, not with approval, but with acceptance of the moment. We'll give you both space, he said to his sister. But remember, you are never alone. Her eyes filled, and this time she didn't fight the tears. One slipped down her cheek. Thank you, she whispered. The music slowly began again, softer than before. Guests started moving, talking quietly, pretending not to have witnessed something deeply personal. But the atmosphere was changed forever. Her husband stood beside her now, not in front of her, not above her, beside her. And he finally understood that the night he tried to prove his power was a night he almost lost what mattered most. The consequences were only beginning to unfold. The party slowly returned to motion, but nothing felt the same. People spoke in lower voices now. Laughter sounded careful, measured. Some guests quietly made excuses and left early, suddenly remembering early meetings or long drives home. Others stayed, not for celebration anymore, but out of curiosity, unsure of how the night would truly end. She remained standing near the center of the room, her brothers close but not crowding her. Their presence felt steady, like pillars. Her husband stood beside her, quieter than she had ever seen him. His shoulders were no longer square for show. His hands were empty now. No drink, no microphone. A senior business partner approached slowly, offering a polite nod to everyone. This has been an emotional evening, he said carefully. Perhaps we should give the couple some space. The eldest brother nodded. That would be appreciated. As the man walked away, her husband exhaled deeply, as a holding in a breath he didn't know he was carrying. He looked around at the room that had once felt like his victory stage. Now it felt unfamiliar. I didn't realize how much I was performing, he said quietly, mostly to himself. She didn't respond right away. Her thoughts were loud. She replayed the jokes, the laughter, the way she had stood under the spotlight trying not to disappear. She also replayed the way her brothers had walked in, not angry, not dramatic, just present. They hadn't saved her. They had reminded everyone who she already was. One of the brothers gently leaned closer. Do you want to sit? He asked softly. She nodded. They guided her to a nearby seating area, away from the stage and cameras. A small couch faced the tall windows. The city lights shimmered outside, distant and quiet compared to the noise inside. She sat down carefully. Her husband hesitated, then sat beside her, leaving space between them. Not distance, just room to breathe. For a few moments, no one spoke. Finally, he broke the silence. I think I forgot where all this started, he said. I got so focused on proving myself. She looked at him. To whom? He thought for a moment. Everyone, he admitted. Maybe even to myself. The middle brother spoke calmly. Confidence doesn't come from applause, he said. It comes from knowing who you are when no one is watching. Her husband nodded slowly. I thought success would make me feel secure, he said. But tonight showed me how fragile that feeling really is. She placed one hand on her belly again. The baby moved gently, a steady reminder of what mattered most. "I didn't marry you for success," she said. "I married you because you were kind when no one else was, because you listened, because you respected me." He closed his eyes briefly. "I lost sight of that." The youngest brother stood nearby, arms folded loosely. "You didn't lose it," he said. "You put aside." That difference mattered. A server approached hesitantly. "Would anyone like water or tea?" she asked softly, sensing the mood. They all accepted water. Simple, grounding. As the server left, the eldest brother turned to the husband. "We want to be clear," he said. "This is not about control. We don't want to interfere in your marriage." "I understand," the husband replied quickly. "But," the brother continued, "respect is not negotiable, especially when a child is involved." The word child settled heavily in the air. Her husband looked at her belly. "I want to be better," he said. "Not just say it. Be it." She studied his face. There was no audience now. No investors. No laughter to hide behind. "Then listen," she said. "Not just tonight. Always." He nodded. "I will." Nearby, a group of guests quietly debated whether to stay or leave. Some avoided looking in their direction altogether. Others stole quick glances, tried to read expressions. The middle brother stood and addressed the room politely. "Thank you all for your understanding tonight," he said. "We'll be stepping out for a bit." There was a collective release of tension. People nodded, murmured polite goodbyes, unsure whether to approach, as they prepared to leave the seating area. Her husband stood as well. "I'll walk with you," he said. She paused, then nodded. They moved toward the exit together. Not rushed, not dramatic, just honest steps. As they passed through the crowd, a few guests quietly apologized to her. One woman touched her arm gently and whispered, "You didn't deserve that." She thanked them softly, though part of her wished apologies weren't necessary at all. Once outside the ballroom, the hallway felt calm and quiet. The noise faded behind closed doors. The carpet muted their footsteps. For the first time that night, she felt like she could breathe. They stopped near a large window overlooking the hotel entrance. Her brothers gave them a moment of privacy, standing a short distance away. Her husband turned to her. "I want to ask you something," he said, "and I need you to be honest." She nodded. "Have I been hurting you longer than tonight?" She didn't answer right away. "Not like tonight," she said finally, "but in smaller ways. Little comments, little dismissals, things that felt easier to ignore than to argue about." He winced. "Why didn't you say anything?" "I did," she replied gently, "just not loudly." He looked down. "I was too busy being heard." She placed her hand over his. "I don't need you to be perfect," she said. "I need you to be present." He squeezed her hand lightly. "I want to be." The eldest brother approached then. "We'll take her home for the night," he said. "She needs rest." The husband hesitated, then nodded. "That's fair." He turned to her. "Can we talk tomorrow?" he asked quietly. She met his eyes. "Yes," she said, "but talking won't be enough." "I know," he replied. She leaned forward slightly, resting her forehead briefly against his chest. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't distance. It was something in between. A pause. Then she stepped back. Her brothers walked her toward the elevator. She glanced back once. Her husband stood there alone now, hands in his pockets, watching her go. The elevator doors closed softly. As they descended, she finally allowed herself to relax. The night had been heavy, but something important had shifted. Truth had a way of clearing the air, even when it hurt. Outside, cool night air greeted them. The city hummed quietly. A car waited near the entrance. As she settled into back seat, the eldest brother looked at her through the mirror. "We're proud of you," he said. She smiled faintly. "I didn't feel strong." "Strength doesn't always feel loud," he replied. The car pulled away. Back inside the hotel, her husband stood alone for a long moment before heading back into the ballroom. The celebration banners still hung from the ceiling. Glasses still clinked. But the illusion of perfection was gone. And for the first time, he realized that losing an image was far less frightening than losing the people who mattered. The real work was just beginning. The days after the party moved slowly, as if time itself needed a moment to recover. News of the event didn't explode the way people might expect, but it traveled quietly through conversations, meetings, and private calls. In business circles, silence often spoke louder than headlines. At home, the house felt different. The rooms were the same, the furniture unchanged, but the air between them carried weight. Her husband returned late that first night, moving carefully, as if every step mattered. He didn't turn on many lights. He didn't check his phone. He sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at nothing. She stayed with her brothers for a few days, not because she was running away, but because she needed space to think without explaining herself. They didn't pressure her. They didn't ask what she planned to do. They simply made sure she ate, rested, and laughed a little when she could. Every morning, her husband sent a short message. "How are you feeling? I'm thinking about you. Please take all the time you need. No long speeches. No excuses. Just presence." When she finally returned home, he was waiting. The house was quiet, clean, almost too careful. He stood when he saw her, unsure whether to move closer or stay where he was. "You don't have to say anything yet," he said softly. "I know," she replied. They sat together on the couch, not touching, just sharing the same space. The baby moved gently inside her, steady and calm. "I've been thinking a lot," he said. "Not about the party, about before, about who I was when we started." She listened. "I used to be scared all the time," he continued. "Scared of failing, scared of disappointing you. And somewhere along the way, success became my shield. I thought if I looked strong, I would feel strong." She turned to him. "But strength doesn't come from hiding fear," she said. "It comes from facing it." He nodded. "I know that now." Over the next few weeks, things changed slowly, not dramatically, not perfectly, but honestly. He stopped making jokes at her expense, even in private. When friends laughed about old habits, he corrected them gently. He began leaving work earlier, attending doctor visits without checking emails. He asked questions, real ones, and listened to the answers without rushing. In meetings, he noticed how often he talked over people, how often he tried to control the room. He didn't change overnight, but awareness had entered the space, and it refused to leave. Some investors pulled back slightly, not because of the family situation, but because they sensed something deeper had shifted. Others stayed, curious, respectful. He accepted that consequence without resentment. At home, they talked more than they ever had, about expectations, about fear, about the kind of parents they wanted to be. One evening, while folding tiny baby clothes, she paused and said, "I don't want our child to grow up thinking love means silence." He looked at her. "Neither do I." She placed a small shirt aside. "Then we need to model something better." He reached for her hand. "I'm ready." When the baby arrived, the room was quiet and full of emotion. He held her hand through every moment, not as a hero, not as a performer, but as a partner. When the baby cried for the first time, his eyes filled with tears, he didn't try to hide. In that moment, none of the applause from the party mattered. Only this did. Weeks later, life settled into a new rhythm. Sleepless nights, soft mornings, small victories. He learned quickly that humility came naturally when holding something so fragile and precious. One afternoon, while rocking the baby, he said quietly, "I used to think respect was something you earned from the world." She smiled gently. "And now I know it starts at home." Her brothers visited often, but never hovered. They trusted her choices. They respected the space she reclaimed for herself. One evening, long after the party had faded into memory, her husband stood in front of a mirror, adjusting his tie for a small business event. She watched from the doorway. He turned to her. "Do I look okay?" She smiled. "You look like yourself." That was enough. He spoke that night, calmly, without jokes meant to impress. When he mentioned family, he did so with quiet pride, not as a punchline. People listened, because authenticity carried its own power. The story didn't end with applause or revenge. It ended with growth, with learning, with the understanding that love is not proven in grand rooms under bright lights, but in small moments when no one is watching. And sometimes The greatest lesson comes not from being humbled in public, but from choosing to rise differently afterward.